You know, when we think about language, we think about communication, right? It's how we talk to each other. But what if it's also one of the most powerful and kind of invisible economic forces shaping our world? A force that can actually decide who gets the best jobs, how much we earn, and even how prosperous a whole country can become.
Okay, let's dive into this with a really fascinating puzzle. We're looking at India, a massive, continent-sized economy with over 1 billion people. But for decades, economists have been scratching their heads over this one thing. Its internal migration rates are surprisingly low. People just don't seem to move for work nearly as much as you'd expect. Why is that? Well, it turns out the answer might be hiding in plain sight.
So, in this explainer, we're going to crack this migration puzzle wide open. We'll follow the clues, expose this hidden language barrier, calculate its staggering cost to the economy, and then, and this is the best part, reveal a surprisingly simple solution.
All right, let's start our investigation. We're drawing on some really groundbreaking research here by Amrutha Manjunath, and we're just going to follow the evidence that links language directly to people's economic choices. First things first, we need to get on the same page about what we mean by a language barrier. In this research, it's not just, do they speak different languages? It's a much smarter, calculated measure of linguistic distance. It's basically the probability that an average person from, say, Mumbai can understand an average person from Chennai. The higher the barrier, the less likely they can communicate. Simple as that.
So, what's the very first clue the data gives us?
Well, maybe not surprisingly, it shows that these language barriers have a huge effect on whether people even decide to pack up and move for a job in the first place. And when I say huge, I mean a massive effect. For workers who don't have a college degree, facing a high language barrier slashes the probability of them migrating to that place by 46%. I mean, that is an enormous friction. It's almost like an invisible wall between different parts of the country.
But here's where it gets really crucial. This wall isn't the same height for everyone. For college-educated workers, the drop is still there, but it's smaller. And why is that? Well, it's pretty simple. They are way more likely to share a common language, a lingua franca like English, that basically lets them bypass the local language barrier.
Okay, on to our second clue. It shows that language doesn't just affect if you move, it also has a huge say in what you do when you get there. It actually funnels people into specific types of jobs. Think about it. A migrant who shows up and faces a language barrier is way less likely to get a job that requires a lot of talking. Things like sales or teaching or management. They get pushed into non-speaking roles, and that's regardless of what their other skills might be. And again, this effect is way weaker for college graduates who have that English language ace up their sleeve.
All right, now for our third and honestly most counterintuitive clue. You'd probably think that facing a language barrier would hurt your wages, right? But the data shows the exact opposite. Migrants who manage to cross a high language barrier actually tend to earn more. So, what is going on here?
This is just a brilliant illustration of something economists call a selection effect. The language barrier is such a high hurdle that only the absolute most productive, most motivated, and highest skilled workers can even think about clearing it. So that small group of people who do make the jump, well, they're exceptional. And because they're exceptional, they command higher wages. Makes sense when you think about it that way. Okay, so we've got our clues laid out. Language barriers cut down on migration, they sort people into different kinds of jobs, and they create this weird wage premium through selection. Now, let's look under the hood at the economic model that explains how this all actually works.
The model is really elegant. It basically treats language as two different kinds of economic friction. First, it's like a travel tax. It just adds a cost that makes moving harder. But second, and this is the really important part, it's a workplace handicap. It directly makes you less productive, especially in those speaking-intensive jobs we were just talking about.
And this right here, this is the absolute key insight of the entire paper, shown in these two graphs. Let's break them down. For the college-educated workers on the left, you can see the two lines, one for a language barrier and one for no barrier. They're almost right on top of each other. It barely makes a dent in their productivity. But now, look at the non-college workers on the right. Whoa, with a language barrier, that productivity curve shifts way to the left. The model actually estimates they become nearly twice as productive in non-speaking roles. This effectively locks them out of the whole service sector, which is built on communication.
So now that we get the mechanics for a single person, let's zoom all the way out and see the massive cost these barriers are imposing on the entire country. The researchers ran this fascinating simulation. They asked,
What if we could just wave a magic wand and make all language barriers in India disappear? The results are, well, they're stunning. Internal migration would jump by over 6 percentage points. Inequality between skilled and unskilled workers would actually fall. And most impressively, the entire country's real income, its overall welfare, would go up by 1.2%. Now, I know what you might be thinking. 1.2% doesn't sound like a huge number, right? But in economic terms, it is monumental. The model shows that getting rid of language barriers would have the same economic benefit as physically shrinking the country, reducing the travel distance between every single location by 56%. Or, to put it another way, it's like instantly boosting the share of college-educated workers in the country by a third. That's the mind-boggling scale of the opportunity being lost here. But it's not just about a static loss. Here's the kicker. As India's economy keeps shifting away from farming and manufacturing and more towards services, this problem is actually getting worse. It's accelerating. Since India's big economic liberalization back in 1991, these speaking-intensive jobs have just exploded. And the model shows that in this new service-based economy, language barriers are an even bigger drag than before. They've suppressed migration by over 7 percentage points, they've widened inequality by 3.4 points, and they've lowered the national welfare by almost 2% compared to a world without them. Okay, so this paints a pretty bleak picture of lost potential, I know. But the research doesn't just stop there. It also points us toward a really hopeful and, frankly, remarkably straightforward solution. So what if the government actually created language programs for migrant workers? Take a look at this chart. It's a cost-benefit analysis. The horizontal axis at the bottom is the cost of the program, and the vertical axis is the net benefit to the economy. That blue line sloping down shows that, yeah, as the program gets more expensive, the benefit comes down. But as long as that line is above zero, the program is a net positive for the whole country. The point where it crosses zero, that's the break-even cost, the absolute most the program could cost before it stops being worth it. And this is the final, powerful result that seals the deal. The estimated real-world cost to run a program like this is just $3.60 per student per hour. Now, if you look back at our chart, that cost is way, way over on the left, deep in the positive benefit territory. This isn't just some nice idea, it's an incredibly cost-effective policy with just huge potential returns. So the crucial takeaway here is that language isn't just about culture, it's economic infrastructure. And investing in that infrastructure can unlock human potential on a massive national scale. Which, it kind of leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? If language barriers are this powerful in the job market for adults, what kind of barrier are they creating for kids trying to get a better education? How are they shaping the fortunes of the next generation before their careers have even begun?